Welcome to This Week in Washington for June the 22nd, 2012. The frustration here in Washington over the inability to get a reauthorization bill continues. Yesterday there was a meeting between House and Senate conferees who said that they would continue to try to get a reauthorization bill out so that it could be voted on by the Senate and the House. Yet the people who met acknowledged that the time was very short to accomplish such a goal. I think it's important again to remind people that the authorization and reauthorization that they're discussing is in fact only a one-year bill, meaning that regardless of what comes out of it, we will be starting this process over again next year. At this stage, despite the discussion yesterday, I still expect the conferees to be unable to reach an agreement in time for them to conclude business before Congress goes on a very long break around the 4th of July, followed by another series of breaks relative to the political conventions. It's just hard to imagine that they can squeeze what needs to be done into this time frame. And we have been told that no discussions or progress have in fact been made on the Keystone Pipeline issue, which has been attached to this whole transportation process. So unfortunately, we don't know much new, and we can expect it to drag on a little bit longer, but I don't really expect it to happen this year. As we look forward to next year, we've already begun discussions with some of our friends and associates of how we need to organize support next session for getting a decent reauthorization, especially in the period that comes when we have a new Congress next January and new members from across the country. In addition to that, this week we were also waiting for the decision from the Supreme Court relative to the Affordable Care Act. As you know, many of the important transportation programs that benefit people in the healthcare field are directly tied to the outcome of what happens in the Affordable Care Act. The court chose not to release a decision on Thursday as expected, and now we understand that the first possible time the decision will be presented could be Monday. So until we see that, we won't exactly know where we are relative to the transportation situation and how that's going to come out depending on what happens to the rest of the legislation after the court makes its decisions. At this stage, it could be the entire act could be declared unconstitutional, parts of it could be declared unconstitutional. The truth of the matter is, as Supreme Court Justice Ginsburg said the other day, no one really knows what's in the final version but them, and that there will be a lot of people who might be surprised. So we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully by Monday we'll know where we are. Later this morning, I'm being interviewed with some representatives who are doing a TCRP study on the Affordable Care Act, Medicaid, and transportation. I thought it would be interesting that they would come this week. I had hoped that our comments could be based on what happened in the Supreme Court, but I guess we can do our own speculating based on what we already know about what was in the legislation. So again, we're all going to have to wait and see how this comes out, and the next several days should give us a clue on both of these extremely important issues. Additionally, in the last week, we've been continuing our efforts looking at new and innovative ways to provide service in community and public transportation. We've made significant progress on the development of our packages for additional lending that should be available in the transportation sector by this fall. And we've been working very hard with our colleagues at the Federal Transit Administration to make sure that ambassador services are not disrupted by the end of that current contract program that we're under. And I think we feel pretty positive on those ideas and both of those things as we continue to move toward the end of the month. We're also following very closely the actions of the Massachusetts legislature, which is voting and finishing its efforts on developing an annual budget for the state of Massachusetts. This has become very important to us because both of our Massachusetts programs, the one in Athol and North Adams, have been included for funding with state funds beginning July 1. This means that these former projects of ours that were provided for as earmarks for many years will finally have guaranteed funding, and that the programs run by Fran and Jana will be incorporated into the local community and public transit systems, which we believe is a positive outcome for the long number of years that we've worked to help provide transportation in those communities. In looking back over that issue the last month or so, I had a very nice conversation with Fran and Jana about, during the last decade, how many thousands of people in those communities have benefited from the work that we were able to help to do thanks to Congressman Olver and our staff there. So I've got my fingers crossed that the proposals that would fund these programs will emerge in the final legislative bill that will be announced probably between now and Monday as well. So this will be a long weekend of waiting for, I hope, good news to emerge on all fronts. This week also saw us preparing for this next issue of Digital Community Transportation Magazine. The issue was originally designed to focus on successful operations that include consistent and ongoing coordination activities, but having had a chance to look at some of the really good stories that are in the issue, I'm very impressed by the amount of innovation these stories present, especially in smaller and medium-sized transit systems. We were reminded during the writing of these stories how the cutting-edge solutions to solving problems, bringing people together, developing new forms of service and revenue have always been hallmarks of what goes on in our smaller transit systems around the country. And I think you'll be very impressed and leave the discussion of these articles in a very hopeful mood, because they show how much our people can do when given enough flexibility to accomplish the goals of connecting people and also the goals of connecting communities. And this issue will also, I think, include a very strong article about a connectivity project that's going on in the West Coast that we think could be an example for others across the country. So in the middle of this uncertainty, we still see our people, the people of community and public transit, continuing to do their important work everywhere. And I hope that we can all draw inspiration from that, and that we will be able to look toward positive outcomes in some of these major areas in Washington that are going on that will help facilitate all of the things that we know we and you and our members do best. It's a very hot and sticky day in Washington. It was a very hot and typically miserable Washington day yesterday. And all I can say is, Rochelle, if you're out there, I really wish we were in the Upper Peninsula today. So all of you will shortly be hearing from Charlie, because we have scheduled our fall meeting in the Upper Peninsula, and I hope that we might get a little bit of their weather thrown this way before we actually get up there, because we could use it today. So my thanks to all of you. We'll be in touch shortly. I hope that we will have good news in the immediate future. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening, and I'll be in touch. Bye for now.